Look like Caitlin Clark had a new video that is definitely breaking the internet.
Caitlin Clark has just sent a seismic shockwave through the entire WNBA world. In a stunning new interview, she has finally broken her silence. Not about her record-breaking stats, not about her unprecedented fame, but about the unvarnished truth of what's been happening behind closed doors.
So there's a video of Caitlin Clark going viral all over the internet, and it's her speaking. I believe this is a Glam Girl interview. I don't know.
The very league that championed her name might now find itself trembling before the sheer power of her voice. From the veiled chaos within locker rooms to the stark, uncomfortable realities of player treatment, Caitlin refused to mince words. Adoring fans are heralding this as her most raw, unfiltered revelation to date. But the question now hanging in the air for everyone to ponder is, who will possess the courage to respond?
I feel like my mom has always kind of been my rock. The first person I called when I got hurt this year was my mom. I'm like, can you fly here and cook me a meal and just spend time with me? And that is just the person that makes you feel safe. And I probably took that for granted as a kid, but my mom always made the best meals. I think it's important to take time for yourself. And I think also, when I do have free time, one of my escapes is cooking a healthy meal for myself, whether that's, breakfast, lunch, or dinner. I really do enjoy that. Just putting on music and making a home cooked meal. And I think that's because it feels like a safe place for myself, because that's kind of what I grew up on.
It began without any fanfare, no flashy promotional teasers, no dramatic lead-up, simply a composed sit-down interview that almost immediately detonated online. Caitlin Clark, on the surface, appeared entirely composed, yet the words she chose carried a profound gravity that compelled the entire WNBA world to come to a sudden, collective halt. For months, a fervent fan base had practically implored her to finally break her silence. The season had been a crucible of palpable tension, fueled by insidious whispers of mistreatment and moments of visible, raw frustration on the court. Through it all, Caitlin had remained conspicuously silent, until this very moment. What she ultimately revealed transcended the purely personal. It was a direct, pointed challenge to the fundamental operational structure of the WNBA from within its own walls.
Lisa Bluter sat down with Sarah Spain, and that was the video I did before this one, and she shedded a bunch of stuff on Caitlin Clark that we just did not know. Stuff that I feel we needed to know, to kind of help strengthen up the fan base. We know we all have been critical of the Caitlin Clark era and the Caitlin Clark fans' hype, I should feel like, moving forward. But Lisa Bluter dropping jewels.
She opened by addressing the immense pressure, the specific kind that accompanies being the league's most promoted player while being forced into a system that never truly offered her protection. She alluded to the fact that what fans witness on camera is only a fraction of what truly happens behind closed doors. The constant scrutiny, the selective media narratives, and the quiet internal politics between teams had all begun to take a significant toll.
We need more of this offseason, of Caitlin Clark speaking with us in depth, telling us stuff we didn't know, just different stuff about her and her personal life. I don't want to be one to, indulge on people's personal life, but this is just great for her to be opening up a little more.
Listeners could palpably feel the distinct shift in her tone. This was no longer the polite, deferential rookie that fans had become accustomed to in press conferences. This was a woman who had been systematically pushed to her absolute limit. Caitlin spoke candidly about how communication with league officials often felt starkly one-sided, as if pivotal decisions about her public image and professional workload were being made entirely without her input or consultation. She explained that her injury recovery, her playing minutes, and even her public appearances were all heavily controlled. Sometimes, she said softly, it feels like they want the brand more than the person. Those words landed with the force of a thunderclap. Fans replayed that specific moment again and again, a single line that perfectly captured what so many had long suspected but could never definitively prove. Within a matter of hours, clips of the interview flooded social media platforms. Hashtags exploded. WNBA insiders scrambled to enact damage control, while a galvanized fan base demanded complete and total transparency. The league had spent months tirelessly attempting to silence the swirling speculation. Now Caitlin herself had unequivocally confirmed it, and this, it was clear, was only the beginning.
I know, everybody's in mixed feelings right now with the genre and with how women's basketball is going. If we want Caitlin Clark to be the best basketball player we know she is, we have to keep supporting her brand. We have to support her financially for us buying her merch, for us buying those Wilson basketballs. We have to still let our voices be heard, the little that stayed. And hopefully, just hopefully, Caitlin Clark can reach the mountaintop again, get back to where she was at.
Caitlin Clark's words did not just trend, they detonated across every conceivable sports platform. Overnight, the entire conversation surrounding the WNBA shifted from game highlights to a stark examination of league accountability. What triggered her to finally speak was not a random impulse. According to sources within her inner circle, Caitlin had reached a definitive breaking point. Months of relentless pressure, quiet, unresolved disagreements, and a mounting sense of frustration had built up to a point where silence was no longer a viable option. She was not just tired of the external criticism, she was tired of being controlled from within. In the interview, Caitlin described how her innate confidence was being systematically chipped away. She explained how she was frequently instructed to tone it down, to avoid saying too much, and to stick to the safe, non-controversial topics that would not ruffle any feathers. But Caitlin's very nature had always been fiery. The same unbridled passion that had made her a household name was now being actively managed, reshaped, and softened by individuals who simply did not understand her intrinsic drive. Fans who had long admired her unfiltered energy could sense that something had been off for months. Now they finally had an explanation. She also touched upon team dynamics, subtly hinting that not everyone in the locker room was supportive. When you become the face of something, she said, you realize not everyone wants you to succeed. It was a subtle yet incredibly potent jab, one that served to confirm the persistent rumors of jealousy and internal tension, a suspicion that many fans had long harbored but were hesitant to articulate out loud. What shocked people the most was her tone, steady, not angry. There was no shouting, no melodrama, just unadulterated truth. She spoke with the profound calm of someone who had fully accepted that speaking out might come at a cost, but that remaining silent would cost even more. Within hours, her quotes were ubiquitous, featured in ESPN segments, dissected on podcasts, and fiercely debated on Twitter. Fans rallied to her defense, while critics meticulously dissected her motives. One thing was abundantly clear: the WNBA's Golden Star had just broken the unspoken code of silence, and the league could no longer afford to ignore her. When Caitlin Clark spoke about the immense weight of expectations, it was not the usual cliché athlete talk about the pressure to perform. This went much deeper. She described how every single move, every facial expression, even her tone of voice during interviews, was relentlessly analyzed by league staff and public relations managers. You start realizing your smile isn't just yours anymore, she said quietly. It's part of the product. That single poignant line hit millions of fans right in the gut. Behind the glamorous facade of fame and sponsorships, she revealed a stark reality where authenticity was being systematically traded for meticulous image control. Caitlin went on to explain how she often felt trapped between two disparate worlds, the player and the brand. As one of a handful of the WNBA's biggest stars, she carried the immense burden of representing not just herself, but the entire league's reputation. Every time she spoke, it had to align perfectly with the organization's overarching agenda. Even her most spontaneous moments of joy were carefully packaged and marketed. Sometimes you feel like they're writing your story for you, she added. The palpable honesty in her voice made the moment even heavier. This was not an act of rebellion. It was an expression of profound exhaustion. For the very first time, fans were granted a glimpse into how utterly suffocating it can be to carry the weight of an entire sports marketing apparatus. Caitlin revealed how she was often instructed to participate in campaigns she did not fully believe in, and how certain public appearances were more about optics than genuine empowerment. I wanted to talk about what really matters, but that's not always the headline they want, she admitted. That statement alone set social media ablaze. Supporters lauded her as brave and fearless, while others wondered how the league would respond. The WNBA, long known for its tight control over its public narratives, suddenly appeared vulnerable. If Caitlin, their most valuable and marketable star, was peeling back the curtain, what other truths had been intentionally hidden from view? The silence from league officials was deafening, but deep down, everyone knew this was not the end. It was only the setup for something far, far bigger. As Caitlin Clark's words continued to echo and reverberate across the vast expanse of social media, the WNBA's reaction was eerily, almost unnaturally, quiet. There was no official statement, no attempt at clarification, no outright denial, just a strategic, deafening silence that only served to fuel the rampant speculation. Fans had expected an immediate response, or at the very least, a concerted attempt at damage control. Instead, reporters were consistently met with the same terse answer from league insiders: no comment at this time. That very silence became the loudest and most damning message of all. For many, it served as a tacit confirmation that Caitlin's revelations had struck a sensitive nerve, one the league could not afford to have publicly exposed. Behind closed doors, executives were reportedly scrambling. Some sources claimed that a series of internal meetings were called to urgently reassess the media coordination strategies surrounding their star players. Others whispered that major league sponsors were requesting immediate clarity before renewing lucrative deals that were intrinsically tied to Caitlin's public image. For the first time, the WNBA's leadership appeared to be caught completely off guard, wholly unprepared for one of their own to speak with such raw, unvarnished honesty. The very athlete they had so meticulously marketed as their centerpiece had now become their biggest and most unpredictable disruptor. Meanwhile, fans online predictably split into two distinct camps. One side vehemently demanded transparency, calling out the league for its abject failure to protect its players' authentic voices. The other side accused Caitlin of jeopardizing the fragile unity within women's basketball. The debate was fierce and impassioned, but one undeniable truth emerged. She had sparked a conversation that could no longer be buried or ignored. Even the analysts, who had once criticized her for her perceived silence, now praised her courage to speak up. They astutely reflected on a familiar pattern seen across professional sports, one that invariably emerges when authenticity clashes with corporate control. The longer the WNBA remained silent, the more powerful Caitlin's message became. Each day that passed without an official response felt like another confirmation that something deeper and more systemic was being deliberately hidden. Fans began to ask, if this is how they treat Caitlin, how are the other less prominent players treated? That single potent question spread like wildfire, compelling everyone from the media to the league's own management to take a closer, more critical look. Caitlin's voice had accomplished what no marketing campaign ever could. It had made people truly listen, but what came next would rigorously test just how much truth the league was willing to handle. The part of Caitlin Clark's interview that sent the strongest and most immediate shockwaves was not about contracts or sponsorships. It was when she subtly peeled back the curtain on what life inside the locker room was really like. Without naming any names, she painted a vivid picture of quiet, simmering tension, of teammates who smiled for the cameras but carried a palpable resentment off the screen. "You start to feel the energy shift," she said. "Not everyone is rooting for you even when you win." That single line hit harder than any stat sheet ever could. It was not gossip, it was a confession. Fans had long sensed that something was amiss beneath the surface. The body language during games, the awkward post-game interviews, and the subtle yet visible on-court friction had all fueled speculation for months. Caitlin's calm, deliberate acknowledgement of these tensions lent them an undeniable credibility. She described how success can make people distant, how the intense glare of the spotlight can blind even the closest of teammates. "It's hard to stay a team," she added, "when fame changes what people expect from you." Her words were honest, uncomfortable, and undeniably human. Behind the scenes, insiders had long whispered about jealousy, about how Caitlin's meteoric rise to stardom had created an unspoken divide between her and other players who felt overshadowed. Some saw her numerous endorsements as unfair. Others felt that the immense attention she drew brought an undue amount of pressure onto the entire team. Caitlin did not attack anyone. She simply told the truth that success can isolate just as much as it can elevate. Her words sparked a much wider, more profound debate. Is the WNBA truly supporting its young stars, or is it merely exploiting their popularity until it inevitably fades? Sports commentators began drawing parallels between her experiences and those of other athletes who had burned out under the constant weight of expectation. Fans began demanding systemic change, better mental health support, stronger and more transparent leadership, and greater accountability. This was no longer just a Caitlin Clark story. It had become a mirror, reflecting the deep-seated cracks in the WNBA's very foundation. And while the league desperately tried to downplay the tension, the fans knew the damage had been done. Caitlin had given a powerful voice to the whispers, and the truth was now irrevocably out in the open. Within hours of Caitlin Clark's interview going public, the corporate side of the WNBA went into a state of frenetic overdrive. Sponsorship teams, public relations agencies, and brand partners all scrambled to control the rapidly escalating narrative. Major media outlets that had once lavishly praised Caitlin for her media polish suddenly and conspicuously shifted their tone. Some defended her bravery, while others accused her of stirring up unnecessary drama. But the real chaos was happening behind the scenes. Multiple sponsors reportedly called for emergency meetings to discuss whether Caitlin's candid remarks could potentially damage the league's carefully curated unity image. That phrase alone, unity image, starkly revealed just how fragile the WNBA's foundation really was. Analysts began pointing out the profound irony of the situation. For months, the league had used Caitlin's face to relentlessly promote messages of empowerment and transparency. Yet now her actual unvarnished honesty was being treated as a direct threat. A few journalists quietly hinted that some sports media executives were being pressured not to cover her comments in depth. Instead, they were instructed to redirect their focus back to her upcoming shoe launch and her various community appearances. Fans caught on with astonishing speed. They're trying to bury her words. One viral post read, "That means she's telling the truth." While the networks debated how to handle the fallout, Caitlin's fan base only grew stronger and more vocal. Her supporters flooded social media with messages of unwavering encouragement, with many hailing her as the whistleblower of women's basketball. Clips from her interview were re-uploaded thousands of times, often edited with defiant captions like, "They can't silence this." Every single attempt to soften the story seemed to backfire spectacularly. League officials were reportedly reaching out to players and their agents to reaffirm loyalty, but some insiders claimed that even the league's veterans were privately supporting Caitlin's courageous stand. The silence from within was finally breaking. The WNBA had always prided itself on its image of unity, but now that unity looked forced, a performance rather than a deeply held principle. Caitlin had perhaps unintentionally exposed just how fragile that illusion truly was. And as the story continued to grow and metastasize, one question loomed larger than ever: what other secrets were waiting to surface next? By the next morning, what had started as a single candid interview had morphed into a full-blown crisis inside the WNBA's headquarters. Reports began to surface that top executives were holding a series of back-to-back high-stakes meetings, desperately trying to find a way to contain the narrative before it spiraled even further out of their control. Public relations teams hastily drafted a variety of statements, but none of them seemed strong enough to calm the raging storm. Every single version read as hollow and disingenuous when compared to Caitlin Clark's raw, unadulterated honesty. The league had spent years meticulously building a carefully managed public image, one of empowerment, progress, and unwavering solidarity. Now that very image was unraveling in real time. Insiders revealed that some executives wanted to issue a public rebuttal, while others argued that responding directly to Caitlin would only serve to legitimize her claims. Behind the scenes, the tension between different departments grew exponentially. Marketing teams fretted about the possibility of sponsors pulling out, while player relations representatives warned that a continued silence would only serve to alienate athletes who were already feeling unheard and undervalued. The very structure of the WNBA's leadership seemed to be cracking under the immense pressure. Meanwhile, whispers of unrest began to spread among the players. Some privately supported Caitlin's stand, saying that she had voiced what many were too afraid to admit. Others worried that the controversy might irreparably damage the league's growth at a time when it needed unity the most. But even those who disagreed with her approach could not deny her courage. She had said what many had only whispered in the confines of locker rooms and in private chats for years. Fans began organizing online movements under hashtags that demanded accountability. Some even called for an independent review of the league's internal operations, arguing that a new era of transparency was long overdue. The WNBA's steadfast refusal to speak only deepened the public's curiosity. For the first time in years, the league was not controlling the story was controlling them. By the end of the week, one thing was crystal clear: Caitlin Clark had forced a reckoning. Her voice had pierced through the polished press releases and the corporate filters. Whether the league liked it or not, the truth was now out in the open, and the entire world was watching. While a veritable storm of chaos erupted around her, Caitlin Clark remained remarkably composed. She did not lash out on social media or post lengthy defensive explanations online. Instead, she carried herself with the same quiet, unwavering confidence that had defined her since her college days. In a brief yet powerful statement following the viral tempest, she simply said, "I just spoke from the heart. That's all I've ever tried to do." Those simple yet profound words reignited the respect of millions. Fans saw a young woman standing her ground, steadfastly refusing to let power, pressure, or internal politics dictate her truth. It was not an act of rebellion, it was leadership in its purest, most unadulterated form. What happened next stunned everyone. Rather than fading under the predictable backlash, Caitlin's popularity soared to even greater heights. Her jersey sales climbed once again, her social media engagement doubled, and her fanbase expanded far beyond the traditional confines of basketball. Even the sports legends and analysts who had once criticized her began to publicly applaud her bravery. She didn't just expose the system, one prominent commentator said, she exposed the courage it takes to stand up to it. Meanwhile, the cracks in the league's armor continued to spread. Some veteran players began to echo her points in their own interviews, subtly confirming her claims about overmanagement, favoritism, and a pervasive lack of transparency. What had started as one player's singular moment of truth was now organically turning into a quiet yet powerful movement. And Caitlin, perhaps unintentionally, had become its symbol. But through it all, she remained grounded. Instead of fueling the fire, she shifted her focus back to training, to her charity work, and to reconnecting with her fans. The very things that reminded her why she fell in love with the game in the first place. The WNBA could try to manage the headlines, but they could not manage authenticity. Caitlin's message had already sunk deep into the public consciousness. She did not destroy the league, she challenged it to be better. And for many, that is precisely what made her bigger than basketball. The storm she caused was not chaos, it was change. Caitlin Clark's interview will be remembered as the moment the WNBA's long-held silence finally cracked wide open. With a potent combination of honesty and calm defiance, she forced the league, the media, and the fans to confront a series of uncomfortable truths. What began as one player's voice quickly transformed into a movement for greater transparency and respect. Instead of breaking her, the controversy only made her stronger, fundamentally reshaping how athletes are seen and heard. The WNBA may try to move on, but Caitlin's message will undoubtedly linger, a powerful reminder that truth is always louder than control, and that real meaningful change often begins with the simple yet profound courage to speak.